بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي أما بعد الحمد لله. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted us so many blessings, and we should learn to appreciate all the blessings which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted us. So inshallah today we'll carry on with our study of the book Islamic Manners by Sheikh Abu Fattah Abu Ghudda. So last time we started the chapter on the manners of visiting. So we looked at keeping appointments, regarding delays and cancellations, and then we discussed about declining a visit, that we should not feel bad when someone declines a visit and accept whatever excuse they have presented. And we looked at controlling our eyes, that when we go to someone's house we should make sure we don't look at things you're not meant to look at. And then we looked at removing our shoes and putting them away nicely before we enter, and choosing the manners of choosing a seat. So inshallah today we'll carry on, and we'll start from the topic about the adab of visiting, that a visitor is not an inspector. So a visitor is not an inspector. So Sheikh says that when you enter a home, whether as a visitor for a short time or as an overnight guest, then do not closely examine its contents as an inspector would. So limit your observation to what you need to see. So don't begin to open closets, cupboards, boxes or drawers, or inspect some packages or some covered objects. So don't go around investigate, looking, inspecting everything, because this is against Islamic manners, and it's an impolite betrayal of the trust that the host has given to us. So we need to uphold these manners when we visit someone, and we need to seek to and cultivate the love and respect of our host. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless and respect all of us. Imam Muhasibi, in his book Al-Risal Al-Mursashidin, he says that the duty of sight is to preclude forbidden sights, meaning protect from looking at things that we are forbidden to look at. So this is including when we visit people's homes or haram things, and not to try to see what has been hidden or covered. Dawood At-Ta'i said, I was told we will be accountable for our minor gazes, just as we are accountable for our minor deeds. So whatever we look, whatever we see, we are going to be questioned about that on the day of Qiyamah as well. So we have to be very, very careful. The Arabic poet Miskin Ad-Darimi, he says that my neighbor should not worry if his door is not closed. That's the trust, that my neighbor should not worry if my door is not closed, meaning that he won't feel that anyone is intruding on his privacy or looking at things that he should not see. So this is the adab and respect. The next one, timing your visit. So choose an appropriate time for your visit. Do not visit at times which are inconvenient, such as mealtime. So when they're eating, you visit them at that time, or when they are sleeping, resting, or relaxing. Rather, you should visit at an appropriate and a good time. Maybe ask them for beforehand if possible. So the length of the visit also should be in accordance to how well you know the hosts. And you should also look at their circumstances and their conditions as well. So do not overstay your welcome by making your visit too long or burdensome. So just look appropriately, whatever time, and depending on your relationship with the person you are visiting. For some people, you know them very well, they're best friends, so they won't mind maybe you staying for longer. But we also have to be very careful and look out for their circumstances and conditions as well. Imam Nawawi, in the book of Adhkar, he says, it is strongly recommended for Muslims to visit the pious people. the brethren, meaning the ummah, our fellow Muslim brothers and sisters, our neighbors, friends, and relatives as well. And he says to be generous, kind, and obliging to them. However, he says the extent of the visit varies according to the host's circumstances. So depending on the circumstance of your host, then the length of your visit will vary. And he says the visit ought to be conducted in a pleasant and convenient times, in a pleasant manner and during convenient times. And there are numerous sayings and traditions in this regard. So this is regarding timing visit. So we have to be very, very careful about our timing and also the length of the visit as well. The next one is greeting. If you enter a room, then greet everyone inside the room. So when you are visiting and you enter a room, then make sure you greet everyone who is inside the room. And if you want to shake hands, so one is you say Assalamu alaikum loudly. And if you want to shake hands with those who are there, then you should start with those who are the most eminent. Those who are the most eminent and the most knowledgeable, the most pious, the oldest, or those who have similar distinction. So they are of the high category, respected people. So you should begin with those who require and need and are respected in the community or in the household. And do not overlook the most distinguished or most eminent, and start with the first person on your right. So don't start with the one on your right, rather look for the one who is most distinguished or eminent or most knowledgeable to start from. And Sheikh says, if you cannot decide that who is the most reputable or who is the most, who's a scholar there, then you can't decide. Then Sheikh says, if those who are present happen to be, or if those who are present, they happen to be of a similar status, they all, if you compare them, then they are all of a similar status, or you can't distinguish who is more respected, more reputable, who's a scholar, then he says, start with the elderly. Why? Because they are the easiest to recognize. So you are still giving, a respect to the elderly. So always do that. Don't begin from your right, but rather go for the respected ulama, for the elderly, and then go and greet others. Imam Bukhari explained that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, the elder. And another hadith he mentions, the elderly come first. Abu Ya'la and At-Tabarani in Awsat, they report that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, start with the elderly, or he said, with the notables. So whenever we greet, or even whenever we are serving something as well, then these are the people we should begin with. The next one, sitting between two persons. If you enter a room, so don't go and sit between two people. So instead, you either sit on their right or sit on their left side. Imam Abu Dawood reports that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in a hadith that no one is to sit between two people without their permission. So if you want to sit, then ask them, can I sit? And then if they say yes, and they make space for you, then you sit. But don't just go and jump in and sit between two people. The same thing regarding Jum'ah as well, that many times, first of all, when people come for Jum'ah, they should come and sit to the front because there's more reward. And when those who come later, if they find any space, or they can go and sit nicely. But if, sometimes there's a bit of space, and then they go and they push people apart and they sit right in the middle. So don't do that. Don't inconvenience people during Jum'ah, because these are bad habits. So we should not sit between two people without their permission, or don't force two people apart. Sometimes two people will be kind enough to favor you by making some room for you to sit between them. So then we should acknowledge this kind gesture by accepting the offer. As I say, come and have a seat here, and they make space for you. So you should accept and go and sit where they have made space for you. And Sheikh says that do not sit cross-legged or crowd them out. So don't go and sit cross-legged like that, or crowd them out and take away all their space. Rather, sit in whatever amount of space that they have kept for you with respect and humility. And a sage, he said, that two persons are considered immoderate. So there are two types of people who are considered to be immoderate. One is a person to whom you give advice. So you give a person advice, but then what happens? He arrogantly holds it in contempt against you. So you give him advice, but you say, oh, you don't do this, or you don't do that. So he begins to put it upon you instead of accepting the advice or practicing upon the advice. So then the immoderate person is a person to whom you give advice, and he arrogantly holds it in contempt against you. And then he said the second person who is considered immoderate is a person who is favored with a seat in a room, and then he sits cross-legged. So then people make space for him, but yet what he does, he crowds them out and he sits cross-legged, and he makes the people who have given him space feel uncomfortable. So we should not do that. And Sheikh says that if you are seated between two people, then don't eavesdrop and listen to what they are saying. So don't try and listen to what these people are saying, lest their conversation may be a confidential one, or it might be a private matter. So we should be careful of not trying to listen in and eavesdropping on two people's conversation. And eavesdropping is a bad habit, and it is a sin. We get sins for it. Imam Bukhari reported that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in a hadith that whoever listens to people's conversations against their wishes, so whoever listens in on people's conversations against their wishes, then he will be punished by liquid lead being poured down their ears on the day of Qiyamah. So this is like liquid lead, like melted metal or something like that. Then that will be poured inside your ears on the day of Qiyamah to show how worse a sin that we have committed. And unfortunately today, this eavesdropping and listening in on people's conversation has become a very, very bad habit among people. So sometimes you are talking, someone will come and interject and begin to say his stuff, or they will try and and they'll stay quietly and they will slowly walk up to you and try and listen into what they are saying. So these are something we have to be very, very careful and not listen in on people's conversations against their wishes. And also, if you happen to hear something private, then don't go and pass it on and spread it around, because that's another bad habit as well, that you're walking past and you happen to hear something which is private, then keep it to yourself and don't go around and passing it on, because that will cause a great fitna as well. And Sheikh says that you should seek to benefit from the company and wisdom of the elders, who are described as a fruit at the end of the season. So the elders who are the people of wisdom, who are described to be a fruit at the end of the season. And Sheikh says, I would add a sun wearing the veil, since it will leave us and disappear at night. Meaning that if we don't attend their gatherings, then one day they will leave us and we will not be able to benefit from them anymore. So Sheikh says, be keen to attend the gatherings of the elders, whether they are ulama, scholars, or whether they are pious people, or whether they are nobles of the community, or they are your relatives. Soon you may lament their departure and your loss. That if you don't benefit from their company while they are amongst us, then we will regret. Then we wish, I wish I had spent more time and I had benefited more from them. So we will, lament on their departure and the loss of us not being able to benefit from them. And another point which comes to my mind is that nowadays, many a times, our children, they don't know who their elders are, whether it's elders in the family as well. They don't know who their maybe grand uncle is, or sometimes the uncles or the extended family. So all these elder people in the community, elder people in your family, then the children should know about them. We need to take, when we go and visit the ulama, so even unfortunately, some people don't know who the local ulama are or who the pious people are. So then we should, whenever we go to visit them, first of all, we should go and visit them. And number two, also take our children when we go to visit them, so that our children may also know about these elderly people, the ulama, and the respected people, and so that we can learn about them and we can learn to respect them as well, and also benefit from their company, and importantly also get their du'as as well. So when ulama come from outside as well, or some respected people come from into our community or within our community as well, we should make a habit to go and visit them. Why? Because we will get their du'as. These are pious people, they are the elderly people, so we learn from them. And then Sheikh says it is inappropriate, it is an inappropriate Muslim manner to whisper to someone sitting next to you. That when you are, if you are in a group of three people, so you are three people, and you whisper something to the person next to you. Now what will happen is, the third person, when he sees you whispering or saying something to them, then they will feel guilty, or they will feel deserted or isolated, and they will think that the worst of thoughts. Maybe they are saying something bad, or there's something wrong with me, and they are saying something negative about me. So this will make the person feel bad or isolated, and that, or we are leaving him out of the conversation. So we should not do that. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he hated this type of thing. Imam Malik and Abu Dawood report that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said in a hadith that no two people shall exchange whispers in the presence of a third person. So when there are three people, two people should not talk amongst themselves all over their voice and make the third person feel left out of the conversation. The Prophet ﷺ says, no two people, meaning it's like an aggressive form to show that such a mistake is not only inappropriate, but it is unimaginable and very, very despicable for a Muslim to do something like that. So Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, he was asked that what if there are four people? Then he answered that then it does not matter, meaning it won't be irritating to whisper or to mutter something, because now there are four people, the person will not feel left out. But we should be careful that we should not, like, nudge or smile or glance at someone to make them also feel that we are saying something negative, or we are commenting or mocking or laughing or joking about something that they have done. And if a friend entrusted you with a secret, then do not betray him or her. So whatever secret you are given, don't go around spreading it. Pet mein baat rakho, aisa nahi ke, you keep on spreading it, everything. So do not even tell it to your best friend or your spouse or your closest relative. No, whatever secret it is, keep it to yourself. It should stay with you. Otherwise, you'll be breaking a trust. And those people who break the trust, they are from the hypocrites, from the munafiqeen. So you have to be very, very careful. The next adab are the duties of the host and the rights of the guest. Sheikh says, if you are having a guest overnight, then be hospitable and be generous to them. But do not exaggerate when you're providing food and drink to your guests. So don't overdo it. Okay, moderation without excess is the sunnah. So keep it moderate, not too much, not too less. Keep it nice and hospitable and generous, and don't overdo it. And Sheikh says you should try your best to make your guests stay pleasant. So the amount, whatever amount he's staying with you, make sure his stay is very pleasant and comfortable, whether when he's asleep or whether he is awake. During the day or during the night, whatever time he is your guest, then try and make sure that your guest's stay is as pleasant and comfortable as possible. And also inform your guest about the direction of the Qibla and show them the way to the bath. So if they're staying overnight or they're staying for a slightly longer period, then you should tell them this is where the Qibla is, or they're staying overnight or most of the time, because that's when they will need to pray. Then you tell them this is where the Qibla is the bathroom, a toilet. So everything you show them, whatever they will need during their stay with you. And your guest, they will also need to use towels after their shower, or after they do wudu, or after they wash their hands before eating or after eating. So Sheikh says that make sure that the towels are fresh and clean. They do not offer towels that you or your family have already used. So give them fresh towels, keep fresh towels for them. And it's a nice etiquette as well, that there are some towels you keep only for your guest. So whenever the guests come, they can use those towels. So don't use the same towels that you have already used or are currently using. And Sheikh says it's also a good idea to offer guests some perfume and a mirror as well. So put some perfume so they can smell nice, and a mirror so they can make sure that they are nice and presentable. So make sure that the toiletries and bath accessories they will be using, they are clean and sanitized. The bathroom is clean, the toilet is clean, for example, or whatever they need to use, then all these accessories, they are also clean and sanitized. And before leading your guest to the bathroom, before showing him the bathroom, inspect the bathroom and remove anything that you don't want your guests to see. So make sure it's nice and presentable, and anything you don't want him to see, then remove it. And then Sheikh says, your guests, they will need a good rest and a quiet sleep. So spare them the noise of the house, of the children, and as much as possible. So reduce the noise as much as possible. And Sheikh also mentions, remove all intimate clothing from their view. So whatever your inside clothing, intimate clothing you have, remove them from the view as well. And Sheikh says, if the guest is a man, then remove all women's clothing and belongings. So wherever they are staying, whatever room they are staying in, so any women's clothing, then remove all of them, and any of the women belongings, also remove all of them. This is desirable, and it is a very good and decent practice that will leave the guest and the host, both of them, they will feel comfortable. And Sheikh says, when meeting your guest, then meet them and serve them with tact and respect. That's very, very important. And don't offend them. And dress properly and look your best, but do not overdo it as well. The close relationship between you and your guest is not an excuse for negligence or indecency in your manner or in your look. Imam Bukhari in Adl Mufrad reported that our forefathers, they used to look their best when they would go to visit each other. And Sheikh says, be kind and generous to your guest. And as a rule, an important thing, as a rule, do not ask them to help you with your house chores. So for example, oh, help me with that, do this for me. No, they are your guests. You have to treat them as guests. Imam Shafi says that gentlemen do not employ their visiting guests. He said, gentlemen do not employ their visiting guests. तो अपने जो मेहमान से खिदमत नहीं लेना चाहिए. That's an important rule. Now, if you visit a relative or a guest, so now that you are a guest, so those were the adab of the host. Now, as a guest, then, if you're visiting a friend or a relative, then you should be considerate of the circumstances of your host and their work commitments. So shorten it as much as possible. And the length of your visit, since every person has various duties, obligations, and responsibilities, so then do not overstay and don't make the length of the visit too long, but be considerate and shorten the length of the visit as much as possible, because every person has their own work and commitments and obligations and responsibility and that they need to attend to. Be considerate of your host and help them with their business. So when you go there as a guest, so the host should not expect any help, but then as a guest, when you go, you should try and help them with their business, house chores, and any obligations, then try to be as helpful as possible. While you are at your guest's house, do not inspect and examine every corner, especially when you are invited beyond the guest room. Otherwise, you might see something that you are not supposed to notice. In addition, do not bother your hosts by asking too many questions. Why is this this? Why is like that? So don't ask them too many questions. The next one, stay in touch. If you cannot visit your relatives, friends, or acquaintances, then you should keep in touch by calling them or sending them a letter or maybe a text message or something. So keep in contact with them if you can't go and visit them. This will leave them with an amicable and a good impression, and this will keep the relationship that you have between yourselves alive. So Al-Fadl ibn Marwan, who was the vizier of the Abbaside Khilafah, he said that inquiring about friends is meeting them. So when you inquire about friends, it's like meeting them, especially now during the lockdown, that we can't go and visit our relatives, our friends, our elders. So what we can do is we need to keep in contact with them. So maybe even if you can do a Zoom meeting or a video call or give them a text message or a call, then we should keep in contact with them. So this is something very, very important. In this regard, Sheikh says, I would like to quote two poems. The first poem, he says, if dear friends missed meeting each other, then the best meeting is a letter. If two good friends, they missed meeting each other, then the best meeting is a letter, meaning you should try and send them a letter or a text or contact them. And then the second poem, he says, I will be grateful every day to a friend sending greetings while far away. I will be grateful every day to a friend sending greetings while far away. Alhamdulillah, now we have so much technology, so we should utilize that kind of technology. In the olden times as well, that what's it called? Because whenever it wasn't possible to call or text or contact very easily, then people would send postcards or letters. So once, at home as well, in my dad's desk, we discovered that there were so many letters that he had sent to mom while he was away. So my mom kept all of them. Why? Because these are reminders. So this was the way that people used to keep in contact before and send them postcards or letters. So if you are far away from people, then keep in contact with them, because that will still keep the relationship alive that you have between yourselves. The last advice His Sheikh here writes here, it's a brief advice to the sisters. So brief advice to my sisters. He says, a specific advice to my dear Muslim sisters. If you want to visit your relatives or your Muslim sisters, then carefully select the day and the hour of your visit and also the duration of the visit. So there are appropriate and inappropriate times for paying visits, even to those who are your friends and your relatives. And then he says, do your best to make the visit a nice, brief, and pleasant one. So avoid turning it into a boring, wearisome, inquisitive, and a lengthy visit. So instead, it should be a visit whose purpose is to rekindle and nourish an old friendship or kinship. So these are the maqsad, that you rekindle or nourish the friendship or the kinship, the relationship that you have. And the visit is desirable if it is short and considerate. And it is undesirable if it is long and tedious. Why? Because the conversation then moves on from being a purposeful conversation and valuable conversation to become something which is aimless and useless. So the honorable follower, Muhammad ibn Shihab Azuri, rahimahullah, he says, when a meeting becomes too long, then shaitan increasingly participates in it. Because if you're running out of nice things to say, then now what happens? You begin to maybe backbite and begin to say things which are aimless and hopeless and useless. So to make the conversation fruitful, keep it short, keep it to the point, and do not make it too long. Otherwise, shaitan increasingly participates in the conversation, and you'll begin to speak about many things you're not meant to speak about and be committing sins and guna. And the Shaykh at the end, make sure that during a visit that most, if not all of your talk is of value and benefit. Keep away from backbiting, gossiping, and idle talk. And then he says, astute Muslim women do not have time for such nonsense. So this is advice to the sisters, but I would say as well, it is advice for all Muslims and all people as well. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from those who follow these akhlaq and manners and advices the Shaykh has given us, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from those who always welcome and always interact properly with our visitors and always fulfill the obligations and the akhlaq and the manners of visiting. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallahu khairan.